What if I told you that for decades, a hidden group of elites has been watching the future? What if they built a machine, a looking glass, to see every choice you might ever make, and to nudge humanity toward a destiny they designed?
They saw it all, they controlled it all, until they saw something that wasn't supposed to happen. They saw you, and they realized their machine was no match for the power of the human mind.
This isn't just another late-night conspiracy rabbit hole. It's a story that gets to the very heart of reality, time, and our own untapped potential. It's the story of Project Looking Glass and how our collective consciousness allegedly shattered the elite's most powerful weapon. Now, before we go any further, I need to be crystal clear about something. The entire concept of Project Looking Glass is an unsubstantiated conspiracy theory. There are no official documents that confirm it ever existed, and the story comes to us from unverified whistleblowers. Most credible sources will tell you their accounts are a hoax or deliberate disinformation. But the tale they weave is so detailed, so internally consistent, and has such wild implications that we just have to explore it. It's a modern myth that asks one hell of a question. What if the future isn't a destination we discover, but a reality we create? The legend of Project Looking Glass begins in the shadows of the American military-industrial complex, at infamous places like Area 51's S4 facility. This is where we first hear from a man named Burisch, who claimed to be a microbiologist on a top-secret program. He was later joined by another whistleblower, Bill Wood, a former Navy SEAL. According to Burisch, the U.S. government had a device that could see into the future, but this wasn't some homegrown tech. The story claims it was reverse-engineered from 2 extraterrestrial sources, technology found in crashed UFOs and, get this, schematics decoded from ancient Sumerian cylinder seals. To understand why this is so bizarre, you have to understand what a cylinder seal actually is. These are small, barrel-shaped objects covered in intricate carvings. When rolled onto wet clay, they create a continuous story. For over a century, mainstream history told us these were just administrative tools, signatures for merchants, or depictions of mythological banquets. But Burisch's account flips this upside down. He claimed that when you look at the geometry of the carvings on specific seals, not just the pictures, but the mathematical ratios between the figures, they align perfectly with the schematics for generating high-energy wormholes. It suggests that the gods of ancient Sumer didn't just rule over humanity. They left behind an instruction manual. Imagine archaeologists brushing dust off a relic from 4000 BC, only to realize the carvings were technical diagrams for electromagnetic field generation. The device itself is described with fascinating and very pseudoscientific detail. Picture a set of huge counter-rotating electromagnetic rings. At its core, a barrel is injected with a special gas cocktail of xenon and argon. The physics described here are theoretically grounded in what's called Einstein-Rosen bridges, but with a twist. The gas cocktail inside the device wasn't just fuel, it was a lensing medium. When the rings spun up to relativistic speeds, they allegedly created a torsion field, basically twisting the fabric of gravity itself. Inside the room, the temperature would plummet, the air would feel heavy, charged with static, and then, in the center of that swirling gas, the looking glass would open. It wasn't like a screen. It was a holographic distortion in the air, a ripple where light from another time was bleeding into ours. This setup supposedly allowed an operator to peek into the past or, more importantly, into probable futures. It wasn't a time travel machine, but a time viewing one. The operators, who were often said to have highly developed psychic abilities, would sit in a special chair synced with a device and mentally ask a question. What if this candidate wins? What if that war starts? What happens if this market crashes? The looking glass would then show them the most likely outcome, a single path out of infinite possibilities. For a secret cabal of global elites, this was the ultimate tool. A technological oracle. They could see social movements coming, rig financial markets, and steer world events to make sure their power was never threatened.
They had a window into tomorrow, a map of what was supposed to be. They could play chess with humanity, and they were always 10 moves ahead. But the machine had a strange quirk, one rooted in the weirdness of quantum physics, the observer effect. The very act of looking at the future could influence it. The machine wasn't showing a movie, it was a dynamic shifting probability, and the operator's own consciousness was part of the equation. The elites thought they could control this. They thought they were the only ones looking. They were wrong. And this one mistake would supposedly lead to the catastrophic failure of their most powerful secret. Around the mid-90s, the atmosphere inside the Looking Glass projects shifted from scientific curiosity to absolute dread. The story goes that operators worldwide started to see something deeply disturbing in the data. For years, the machine had functioned like a map. You picked a destination, and it showed you the roads to get there. But suddenly, the map changed. No matter what question they asked, no matter what variables they tweaked, whether they asked about the stock market in 2015 or a geopolitical conflict in 2020, the visions stopped working. Instead, all possible timelines began to collapse into one single, unavoidable point. Every road, no matter where it began, ended at the same destination. December 21st, 2012. Now, we all know this date. In pop culture, it was the end of the Mayan long count calendar, the subject of disaster movies and New Age prophecies. But inside these black-budget programs, this wasn't a cultural trend. It was a mathematical certainty. The machine was showing them a singularity, a point in time where the infinite possibilities of the future were squeezed through a tiny chaotic bottleneck. The operators called it a nexus event. As they approached this date, the probability data became overwhelming. They saw visions of a cataclysm that would effectively hit the reset button on civilization. Some reports described a massive solar killshot, a coronal mass ejection so powerful it would strip away the atmosphere. Others saw a crustal displacement, a violent pole shift that would trigger supersonic winds and tsunamis miles high. But here is where the story pivots from a disaster movie to a temporal thriller. The Whistleblowers claim that this looming catastrophe didn't just scare the elites, it attracted visitors. Not from space, but from time. According to the lore, the Looking Glass data revealed that this 2012 catastrophe was the catalyst that split humanity into different evolutionary paths. And now, representatives from those future paths had traveled back to our present to ensure, or prevent, the event that created them. The narrative describes two main factions locked in a temporal Cold War. First, you had the group known as the P45S, often associated with the Orion constellation. These beings were allegedly us, humanity from a timeline 45,000 years in the future. In their history, the catastrophe happened. It forced them underground, stripping them of emotion and spirituality in favor of cold, hard logic and technological survival. They supposedly looked like the classic grey aliens, atrophied bodies, massive eyes, devoid of empathy. They were here to ensure the disaster occurred, because without it, their timeline and their very existence would be erased. Opposing them were the P52S, or the J-Rods, from 52,000 years in the future. They represented a timeline where humanity had taken a different path, one where they survived by holding onto their humanity, their spirituality, and their connection to the Earth. They traveled back to heal the fracture, to stop the catastrophe, so that humanity wouldn't have to suffer the thousands of years of genetic degradation that the P45S endured. Imagine the tension in that room. You have generals and scientists watching a screen that shows the end of the world, while secretly negotiating with two warring versions of their own descendants. It sounds insane, but in the context of the Looking Glass, it was just data. Terrified by the P45's grim reality and the looming date, the elites allegedly tried to use the machine to find an escape route. They treated reality like a chess game. They thought if they made just the right move,
assassinated the right leader, crashed the right economy, started the right war. They could steer the train off the tracks before it hit the 2012 cliff. They ran thousands of simulations. They tried every trick in their playbook of manipulation. But the machine was relentless. Every time they looked at the probability wave for December 21st, 2012, it was solid. The event was unavoidable. The timelines were contracted tight, like a knot that couldn't be untied. They resigned themselves to the inevitable. They built underground bunkers, they stockpiled resources, and they prepared to ride out the apocalypse they saw coming. Then the day came. The sun rose. The clock ticked past the solstice. And nothing happened. There was no solar flare. The poles didn't shift. The earth didn't shake. For the rest of the world, it was just a Friday. But for the keepers of Project Looking Glass, the silence was deafening. Their perfect machine, their alien oracle that had successfully predicted decades of geopolitical events, had been catastrophically, impossibly wrong. The panic that followed was worse than the fear of the apocalypse. Because if the machine was wrong about the end of the world, what else was it wrong about? They rushed to recalibrate. They fired the machine up again to look past 2012, to see what the new future held. But when they looked into the mirror, they saw nothing. Before 2012, the future looked like a braided river, complex but flowing in one direction. After 2012, the operators reported seeing white noise. The clear visions were gone.
The timelines weren't converging anymore. They were fracturing, splintering into infinite directions simultaneously. It was a fog of probability so thick and chaotic that no computer could calculate a likely outcome.
The elites were flying blind. Their greatest weapon, the ability to know the end of the game before the first move was made, was broken. And for years, they couldn't figure out why. What variable had entered the equation that was powerful enough to shatter the timelines? What had changed? The answer to that question is way more profound than any piece of alien technology. It's an idea so powerful, it supposedly made the most advanced predictive models in history obsolete. If you're finding this story as mind-bending as we do, take a second to hit that subscribe button. You're not going to want to miss how this ends, because the force that allegedly broke the Looking Glass is a power that every single one of us has. The failure of Project Looking Glass after 2012 supposedly sent shockwaves through the secret world. Their models were useless, and the future, once a fixed point on a map, was now a swirling chaos. According to the Whistleblowers, it took them years to figure out what went wrong. But the conclusion they came to was staggering. The machine hadn't broken, it had been overridden. The force that broke it was the collective consciousness of humanity. Think of it like this. The Looking Glass could only run calculations based on the data it had, and the actions of a few thousand hidden manipulators. It was built to predict the behavior of a population that was mostly asleep, acting on predictable patterns of fear, desire, and apathy. If humanity is a herd of sheep, the machine can predict exactly where the herd will go. But around 2012, something started to change. The sheep started waking up. That whole 2012 prophecy, even though it was wrong about the apocalypse, had an incredible side effect. It got millions of people to seriously think about the future of humanity, to question the state of the world, and to imagine something better. This, combined with the explosion of the internet and the free flow of information, sparked a global conversation, a kind of mass awakening. People started to consciously think about creating a better future, not just waiting for one. According to the lore, this had a quantum effect. The elites had been using fear of war, collapse, disaster, to fuel what's called the red timeline, a future of doom and control. Fear is a low-frequency emotion, predictable, and easy to manipulate. But as millions of people started consciously choosing hope, love, and unity, they began pouring energy into a completely different timeline, the blue timeline of spiritual growth and freedom. The collective thoughts, feelings, and intentions of billions of people created a variable so massive, so complex, that the Looking Glass's algorithm just couldn't compute it. It was like one drop of rain trying to predict the movement of an entire ocean. Whistleblower Bill Wood even linked this phenomenon to the Mandela effect. You know the sensation, vast groups of people remembering history differently. You swear the children's book was spelled Berenstein with an E, but reality now says Berenstain with an A. You remember a cornucopia in the logo of a fruit company that apparently never existed? Wood suggested that these aren't just bad memories. They are timeline aftershocks. They are faint echoes of other probable realities that were overwritten as our collective consciousness shifted the car into a new lane. The looking glass wasn't just a predictive tool. It was a mirror reflecting the consciousness of its user. And when billions of new users started looking in that mirror, their combined will shattered the reflection the elites were trying to control. But here is the uncomfortable truth that most of these stories leave out.
While we collectively broke the machine, most of us still aren't using our power to its full potential. Why? Because modern life is physically designed to keep us disconnected. Think about it. The stress, the notifications, the noise, it all keeps our brains locked in a reactive state, a state of low-level survival mode known as beta waves. Neuroscientists have identified a specific brainwave frequency, the Theta state. That is the key to this reality-bending power. It's the state where intuition becomes sharp and luck becomes a habit. Children are in this state almost constantly, which is why their learning and imagination are limitless. But as adults, our Theta capabilities have essentially atrophied. We've been switched off. However, there is a leaked method to turn it back on. A NASA-trained neuroscientist, Dr. James Rivers, has released a controversial presentation about a 7-minute sound wave ritual that allegedly reactivates this dormant part of your brain. This isn't meditation, and it isn't magic. It's biology. And if the looking glass story is true, that your consciousness is the ultimate weapon, then you owe it to yourself to make sure that weapon is fully loaded. We found the video that explains exactly how to activate this genius wave. I've pinned the private link in the top comment below. It's the one that says, "Watch the video." Click that before it gets pulled down and see what happens when you finally wake up for real. Faced with a future they couldn't see or control, the elites did the only thing they could. According to the story, sometime around 2017, the looking glass devices were quietly taken apart and the projects was shut down. Their time machine was useless. It could only show them futures based on a humanity that didn't know its own power. A humanity that is awake, conscious, and intentional is, by its very nature, unpredictable to a machine. This is the real punchline of the looking glass story. The power of this narrative isn't about whether the tech was real or if Dan Burisch told the truth. It's about why this story resonates with so many people. It suggests that the most powerful force in the universe isn't some secret alien technology locked in a bunker. It's the combined power of human thought, belief, and intention. The story says the elites had a machine that could see the future, but humanity has a mind-based time weapon that can write the future. Our reality isn't a fixed script we're forced to act out. It's a collaborative, open-source project, and our consciousness is the code. Every thought of hope is a line of code for a better world. Every act of kindness is a patch that fixes a bug in the old system. Every time we refuse to give in to fear, we defund the timelines of disaster. So, I'll leave you with this question. If there's even a shred of truth in this story, it means the most important battle for the future is happening right now, inside your own mind. What kind of future are you choosing to create? If you want to go deeper down the rabbit hole of consciousness, be sure to check out the link in the description for that 7-minute ritual I mentioned, or click our next video on the CIA's Gateway process. The link is on your screen now. Thanks for watching.